Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm over in the knife shop again. I've been pretty busy today. I think I've been over here for about 7 or 8 hours, just kind of getting a few batches of knives cut out. All these guys started as bars of steel this morning, and so I'm getting closer to having them ready to heat treat. But what I wanted to do today was kind of take a break and talk about kind of an announcement I'm making with my knives. And it's going to be kind of an end of an era for me. I started making knives about a little over 3 years ago, and my first design was the Bush Hunter, and it has taken on. It's probably on its third generation now, and it's been improved on, and kind of developed into what I felt was kind of my ultimate field knife. And what I've found though is there is a lot of labor involved in that design. It's a very time consuming design to make. And it takes me about 12 hours start to finish to make a knife, and that includes the sheath as well. And basically that's just not sustainable for me to keep doing that. The way I kind of justified the extra time, I mean, I knew I wasn't ever going to, I don't just do this to make money. I enjoy making knives, but at some point I have to be fair to myself. And the way I kind of justified that extra labor the last few years is just because, I was learning, and I felt that every knife I made was better than the last, and I was constantly making improvements. And I felt that the customer was always getting their money's worth, and so I didn't mind that I wasn't making top dollar, so to speak. But now I want to start producing more knives, and so therefore I'm going to go ahead and retire the Bush Hunter as of today. These 4 here, and then this one, and these 3 are the last 8 that I'm going to be making, at least for a while. I mean, based on the math, I'd probably have to raise the price from $300 to at least $450 to make it fair to myself. And I could do that, and I may do that in the future. But I'm also wanting to produce some simpler and more economical knife designs that are also high quality. Because when I got into making knives, that's what I was originally after, was a high quality field knife that kind of met my criteria, and there just wasn't anything out there. And so that's what these 3 knives are here. And so I'll be retiring the Bush Hunter. Now the first one is the Buffalo Scout, and I changed the name because I didn't want it to get confused. I didn't want people to get confused on it. But you may notice it's very similar. And what I did was I took the best features, what worked the best on this knife, got rid of the redundant and maybe unnecessary features, and just simplified the design. And by simplifying it, it's more economical to produce, which means I don't have to charge as much money for it, and it's just better for everybody all around. And so let's talk about some of the changes that I'm going to make. So the Bush Hunter's always been made out of 5/32 inch 52-100 steel, and I always kind of felt that was overkill. 52-100 is a very, very tough steel, and unlike, lower quality steel knives that have to be 3/16 or a 1/4 inch thick to have the durability, 52-100 doesn't have to be that thick. It's just completely overkill. And so I'm going down to 1/8 inch thick steel. Still a pretty, hefty blade, to be honest, compared to a lot of knives. So that means it's a little more economical, but more importantly, it's lighter weight. Doesn't seem like a 32nd of an inch would make that much of a difference, but you can tell there's a difference. The next change I'm going to be making is going from the saber grind that I've used to a Scandi grind. And my reasoning for that is I'm still going to use a 30-degree edge. And so if you think about, if all factors are equal, steel type, hardness, etc. And they both have a 30-degree edge. If I put a 30-degree edge on this one and this one, they're going to cut the same. 30 degrees is 30 degrees. The edge retention will be the same. All of it's going to be the same. The only difference is this one, because of its thinned down profile, might be a little more slicey, for example. This one with the saber grind, and it'll only come up about that high roughly with a 30-degree edge. This knife will have a little bit more of a wedge effect, which isn't a bad thing. For general purpose field use where you're processing wood and making tools off the landscape, this is going to work a little better than this. Although this one might be a little better, maybe, at skinning. But part of the benefit of going to an 1/8" steel is that with a Scandi grind, there's not going to be that much of a difference. If I was using 1/4" steel and then put a Scandi grind on it, you definitely would be noticing a difference there. I've got knives that thick with Scandis, and there's a major difference. I also have knives about this thick with Scandi grinds, and you don't really notice. So when you go to a thinner steel, that's where a Scandi kind of shines. I think anything thicker than 1/8 with a Scandi is kind of too wedge-like for my liking. Okay, so that's the Buffalo Scout. It'll come with 1/4" G10 scales. I'm not going to do as much sculpting or shaping on the handles as I did on this one, but I think from my experience, I think just a nicely rounded kind of oval shaped handle, will work just fine. It'll come with a single stainless loveless fastener and a single lanyard tube in the back. Still has the very ergonomic handle, just like the Bush Hunter. One thing is the Bush Hunter had an exposed scraper pommel. I'm going to go ahead and create a more rounded profile on the back. One thing I noticed with my own knives as I was carrying them, the scraper pommel, it was handy once in a while, but I didn't really use it a whole lot, not with a full 90-degree spine up here. And it kind of dinged my rifle a lot, or my optics when I had my rifle slung. So I'm going to go to something a little more rounded here. But other than that, it's basically going to be a very similar knife. In fact, it might even be a better knife. I'm kind of excited to get some in the field. It's still going to retain the ferro rod scraper notch as well. Still got the butcher style hump. I mean, basically from here forward, other than the grind difference, it's the same knife. Okay, so then let's talk about these two, the drop tine small and the drop tine large. And so I'm sure you've probably seen, I think I've had it in a few videos and some other posts, a knife I was calling my prototype drop tine. And I'll put a picture of that in so you can kind of see what it looked like finished. But basically I knew that some of my customers, students, readers want that good general purpose field knife, and that's what the Buffalo Scout is. I think it's reminiscent of the old rifleman's knives and, you know, just a good belt knife that you would take with you in the field, where I want the drop tine to be more of a hunting knife. And so these probably will still retain a saber grind. I know in this picture I had a Scandi on there, but I think these are going to still retain that saber grind to make them a little better at skinning. And the reason I made a small and a large, or a short and a long, is some people like a shorter hunting knife and some people like a little bit extra length. And so really the only difference is there's about a 1/2 inch extra blade length and a 1/2 inch extra handle length. And so I wear a medium-sized mechanics glove, and you can see the drop tine short pretty much fits my hand perfectly. Not that the drop tine long is bad. It's got a little extra handle, which is nice sometimes if you have to chop. But these two are both also made from 1/8 inch 52-100. They'll have a stainless loveless bolt and a stainless lanyard tube still. Still have the ferro rod notch for if you want to make a fire easily. And also be 1/4 inch G10 handles. So the nice thing is, like I said, this knife with the sheath, you know, to be fair to myself, I have to price it so much higher. And I don't want to leave out the guys, the students that are, it costs a lot of money to get geared up. It costs a lot of money to go to classes. And so I wanted to make something, like I said, more economical without chinsing on the quality. I mean, these are still going to have a great heat treat. The handles are still going to be epoxied. I mean, all the good features of the Bush Hunter will still be in here. I've just cut back on the redundancies and the really labor-intensive processes that I was doing. Now, the major difference also will be the sheaths. Where this was the Kydex sheath that I was making in-house, these are all going to come with a JRE leather sheath, which, if you're not familiar with JRE leather sheaths, they're very high-quality leather sheaths. And basically, that just cuts back on the labor. Now, that's not to say that if you really want a Kydex sheath like what I make, we could certainly make one for these. But to keep that price point under $200, I'm going with a pre-manufactured sheath. So, anyways, I'll be continuing to I got 5 more Bush Hunters to go. So I have a few extra blades. And I think I'm going to keep one for myself. And then I've got a friend that's been waiting on one for quite a while. So I think he might be getting one. I'm not sure what I'll do with the last one. Now I do have I'm going to have a few drop tine shorts. They're going to be 52-100, but they're I had a little bit of 5/32 steel left over. So I'm going to have a few of those, and I'll put 1/4 inch scales on them as well, kind of keep them thinner. But as I kind of get these done, I'll start posting them up on the store, and of course I'll make an announcement here and a video to kind of show you guys how they turned out. So anyways, thanks for watching and have a good day. Okay, I want to add one more note about the heat treat. And so with my Bush Hunter, I was doing a very custom heat treat with a DET anneal. And basically it was a very time-consuming process. It produces good results, but 52-100 is it's a very good steel. It's used for ball bearings, drill bits, taps and dies, lots of hard use industrial equipment. And the industry standard heat treat is simple. Now, what I've decided to do to also make these other knives more economical, the new ones, is to go to the industry standard heat treat, which takes me probably 1/4 of the time compared to going through the DET anneal process. And so I think in the future, these knives with their, sub $200 price point will have the industry standard heat treat, and they should be excellent knives. I doubt anybody will even know the difference. And then if I should continue to produce the Bush Hunter in the future at that higher price, I think that's where that DET anneal will come into play. And, what the heck is a DET anneal anyways? It's basically a annealing process that you go through to produce the finest grain structure in the steel possible, which 52-100 is known for its tight grain structure anyways. And so you're just taking that really good grain structure and you're refining it even further. And what that does is it allows you to create a very thin and sharp edge. But part of the reason I feel like it's probably a waste of time for me is because I'm not building super high-end chef's knives here. You can kind of see it's a 40 thousandths thick edge. And then after I get done heat treating this, I'll put a 30-degree edge on that 40 thousandths. And so it's a very, as far as what 52-100 is capable of, it's a very, I'm not even trying to push it to its capabilities here. There's a big safety factor, so to speak, built in there so that when you're out in the woods batoning or doing whatever you're doing or hitting a bone on an animal, you're not chipping your blade out. And so I feel like going through the DET anneal process where, very good, it's a very good thing to do if you're trying to make a max performance thin knife, um, it's kind of a waste of time with these because I'm just making them a little thicker, a little heavier duty. And so, like I said, I doubt anybody's ever going to notice the difference. And so I'll still do it on the Bush Hunter. That'll kind of be the premier knife, and it'll deserve a premier process. But for these more economical knives, I think the industry standard heat treat will be just fine. If you've ever been around or know anything about machining, I mean, it's taps and dies and drill bits and ball bearings. Those are all pretty items that get used very heavily. And I doubt you're going to use your knife as hard as a ball bearing gets used, or a drill bit drilling through steel, at high RPM. So, I guess if you are doing that, you're probably want one of these knives. But anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there just for transparency. I want to be open and honest with my customers. So anyways, have a good day.